Hi everyone, I'm Neama Romani and I'm here with my good friend XIXI Yang, and we're going to talk everything content creation and how to avoid legal problems. So what are some of the issues that you've experienced as one of the best content creators out there?
Thank you so much, Neema. First of all, I am so honored to be on your channel. Been a huge fan of yours for so long. I am loving all the content that you have been creating across your multiple channels. I feel like I'm always watching and learning so much knowledge about law. Let's see, when it comes to traditional media, boy, I hate to admit it, but we have definitely gotten into a lot of trouble because back in the days, we didn't understand copyright laws, right? And I feel like when it comes to the internet, a lot of this stuff was sort of like the Wild Wild West. There wasn't a lot of regulations. There wasn't a lot of rules that we could follow. So one of my biggest questions has always been, what happens if you just share other people's content? Do you have to think about the legality behind it? How can you discern that that's shareable content, or are you going to get into trouble if you share it?
You can get into trouble, and we're dealing with copyright law. And if you're really copying someone's content and putting it out there without attributing it to someone else, or it falling under what we call the fair use doctrine, you can be sued. And you can be sued for actual damages or actually statutory damages. So what you have to do if you're using someone else's content, get permission, attribute the content to them, or just use a portion, a small portion that may be newsworthy that can really fall under that what we call fair use exception. You can't use the whole content, but you can use a little piece if you're going to be talking about it.
What if you're on the other end? Because I've been in those shoes before where I do an awesome exclusive interview with a celebrity, and then next thing you know, I see it popping up all over other people's channels. Not fair use, just straight unedited video uploaded as is.
Yeah.
What are my legal rights?
Yeah, then you're talking about straight infringement, what we used to call plagiarism when you were a kid and I was a kid. So what you want to do then, you want to hire an intellectual property attorney, someone that has experience with copyright litigation. And the question you got to ask yourself, most of them are going to work hourly. They're not going to work on contingency. So is it worth your time to police really and enforce your intellectual property rights? If you're going to be a big time content creator, it's something that you're going to have to do. You want that content to be exclusive, and it may not be a big money maker. In fact, you may ultimately lose money, but you gotta protect your rights, because if you don't, then no one else will.
About 6 or 7 years ago, I had a big star in my studio for my television show. I'm not gonna give you her name because I don't wanna get into trouble, but let's just say I'm sure every single one of you watching is very familiar with who she is. So she came into the studio and she did my show. It was a great interview, went really well. And then right after the interview, her publicist came over to me and she said, "Psst, hey, by the way, so-and-so doesn't want behind the scenes photos of this interview. Can your photographer delete that from your camera?" So do I have to delete it, or can I hold on to it?
I think you can hold on to it, and this is why. So we're talking about a little bit of a separate issue. It's name, likeness, image. Do you have consent to use that person's face, their name, in your video? And if you have consent, it's gonna be difficult for them to argue that, after the fact, I withdraw that consent. Obviously, to be safe, what you want to do is document everything. And this is something all lawyers are going to tell you. Really, if it's not in writing, it's going to be hard to argue. But the fact that someone is sitting for an interview on your show, you finish the interview, and after the fact they say, no, I don't consent to that, that's going to be a tough argument for the interviewee to win.
Oh, so I can just hold on to it and maybe share it with the world one day.
Yeah, legally, yeah, you're probably going to be okay.
So speaking of sharing content, right? Do you have to tag who the original creator is, maybe even ask for their permission? What is the proper way to do that?
Yeah, generally speaking, when you're sharing content, it's clear that it's not yours. You're resharing it, you're retweeting it, you're disseminating it further. So it's not going to be a copyright infringement issue as long as it's clear that what you're sharing doesn't belong to you. It's infringing where you try to take someone else's content, misappropriate it, and make it your own.
What happens if consent changes over time, right? I've also had situations in the past when I did some beautiful collaborations, videos went viral, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they no longer want to be a content creator. They want the video taken down. They no longer give consent. What are my rights?
So going back to, it's always good to document it that you have the license to use that person's name, image, likeness in perpetuity, forever, right? There's no limitation. If you don't, then that comes into that ambiguous area. You have a verbal agreement. It's not reduced to writing. Was it for some period of time? Sounds like it wasn't, because they didn't raise the consent issue, withdrawing it until years later. I think you're going to be okay, but obviously that's what judges and juries are for, and sometimes those issues get litigated if you don't have a writing.
I know you can't really talk about specific cases that you've worked on, but what has completely blown your mind? What has gravitated your attention or fascinated you when it comes to the realms of content creators and the law?
Yeah, social media has changed everything. What I've seen is a lot of defamation lawsuits. People say all sorts of things on social media, and those comments, those posts, those stories, they can go viral. So what you're seeing now is a lot of defamation lawsuits, not against traditional media like CNN and so forth, that would typically be the subject of this, and they have First Amendment protections because the news generally has generally the broadest protections when it comes to free speech in the First Amendment. Now you're dealing with ordinary folks who won't necessarily be reporters or journalists, and they're just mouthing off on social media, and all of a sudden, whether they're spreading lies or rumors or misinformation, they're getting sued in a way that we really haven't seen. Well, XIXI, you're the one creating all this amazing content, right? You're interviewing celebrities, you're interviewing political folks. Have you ever had a situation where someone has taken your content, misappropriated it, claimed it for their own, or spread it in a way that wasn't authorized by you?
Neama, if I had a penny for every single time that it's happened, I would be retired by now. So absolutely, and unfortunately, the answer is yes. So a couple of years back, I was doing an exclusive interview with a very high profile celebrity, and the interview was going so well. I was able to get a lot of breaking news tidbits in there. But then, before I even got back to the studio, I saw that another publication who was standing close proximity to us recorded the whole interview, and because they're print, they're not video, they actually published my interview as their own exclusive. And it got picked up by, every other publication right after the cover story came out. And I felt so mad. I felt so devastated because there was almost no way to prove that I was the first to do it, even though I had the video. Because, you're very familiar with media. In the world of media, whoever gets it out first gets the credit. And people are often too lazy to fact check. So if that ever happens to me again, what can I do?
Yeah, I think what you want to do in those circumstances is make it clear that whoever else is there, that this is your interview. And if you can somehow deny access, that's obviously the easiest, right? That helps you protect your content. Otherwise, the argument's going to be from these other journalists that, look, this was a press conference, or this was something that whoever this individual was made him or herself available to all media outlets. It's gonna be a little bit more challenging when that happens. So if you can, limit your interview to a one-on-one, like a Barbara Walters type situation, in the studio, if you can. If you can't, then you gotta make sure that in writing, you put folks on notice that this is copywritten material, that you have the exclusive right, and they don't have any right to use it, aside from the fair use doctrine that we mentioned earlier. They can generally reference your interview with this particular celebrity.
I know, especially in the beginning when I started branching from traditional media, going into social media, starting my Instagram account. I remember when I had like 1,000 followers. I was so excited. I thought I made it. when Instagram was so new, when brands were just beginning to start paying some of the influencers, and even now there's still, micro influencers, macro influencers, mega influencers. What happens when influencers don't get paid? Let's say they sign a contract with a brand, right? Sign a contract, everything is kosher. And then they deliver on the products, 30 days go by, independent contractor, net 30, and then the money's still not there.
That's a huge problem because there's a lot of these social media companies, whether they're selling merch or whatever, fly-by-night companies. And let's be real, there's a lot of scams on social media. It could be at the influencer level, it could be at the company level. So you have influencers that are peddling products that really aren't what they purport to be, right? Blatant false advertising. And on the back end, you have these companies that either aren't delivering or aren't paying their influencers what they deserve. So what you're dealing with there would be a straight breach of contract action. You have a contract between yourself as an influencer and the company, and you just got to go after them and sue them. What I see as a huge problem is a lot of these companies, they're overseas, they're not here, and it's a challenge. Even if you get a judgment here in the United States, you gotta try to enforce it in another country. Not easy. So what I tell everyone is, if you're working with a company, make sure they're reputable, make sure they're here, and make sure you have some recourse if they don't pay you so you can go after them.
What are some of the signs that you use to make sure that a company is reputable?
I mean, the best thing you could do is have an attorney run an asset search, make sure that the company is legitimate, it's registered with the Secretary of State in the particular state they're an entity, it's an LLC, it's an S Corp, it's a C Corp. Everything you would do to really determine, is this a legitimate company? Or is this some dude on social media that happens to have a lot of fake followers and is selling something that ultimately you have no idea who he is, where he is, and if you're ever going to get paid by this person? It's kind of like dating, right?
Yeah.
Before you get into any relationship, you're going to Google the person. So just make sure you Google the company, do a little bit of due diligence so you know they're actually dealing with someone who's legitimate.
Take it from Neama, you guys. Look up their LinkedIn. Look up their Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. All right, so now if the roles are reversed a little bit, if you are a small business, right, perhaps in e-commerce, and you're looking to hire talents, hire influencers, how should you vet them, and how can you protect yourself legally?
What you want to do, regardless of whether if you're on the company side or the influencer side, the person who pays last, they have the advantage, right? So if you pay an influencer, you're hoping that he or she is going to do what they said they're going to do. Post it, keep it up, story, whatever the case may be. I know countless stories where someone's paid an influencer and guess what? They didn't get the post that they wanted. You know?
No.
So what you want to do is at least structure the payments in a way where all of it is after the post happens, or at least half and half. So that influencer still has some skin in the game and they have a reason to go through and fulfill their promise, because I know a lot of companies that have been burned by influencers that haven't done what they said they were going to do.
That's such a smart idea. So would you suggest to do like maybe 50% upfront and then 50 upon the delivery of the final product?
Absolutely. You don't want to give all your money and just basically hope that someone's going to fulfill their obligations, because most of the time people don't do the right thing even though they should.
I do remember going on a trip with a very big brand. We're all having so much fun by the beach, and then someone slipped and fell, right? Someone slipped and fell. So from a brand's perspective, you're doing this big influencer content creator trip. Injuries in the back of your mind. You're thinking about all the amazing content you want to create. You're not thinking about someone slipping and falling. How can you protect yourself legally? And let's say if the roles were reversed, you're a content creator like me, that happens to you, what can you do?
Yeah, so injuries are common, especially we see social media as people are doing stunts and all sorts of risky things, and people get hurt. It just happens. It's the reality of life, and here as a personal injury firm, we deal with it every single day. So normally speaking, there is no special relationship between the content creator and the influencer or the company, because you're really an independent contractor or you're in a joint venture. It's not like an employer-employee relationship where there might be workers' compensation coverage, for instance, that might cover that. Usually, unless there's some independent theory of liability that the company created a risk that caused the individual to be harmed, the individual isn't going to have a recourse to sue the company, again, unless the company did something wrong. So it's really going to depend on the facts and circumstances of the case, but unless they created the risk, the individual who was hurt is going to be out of luck. So XIXI, one of the things I've seen that's changed in the past few years is really disclosures when it comes to ads, right? Back in the day, the Wild West, people were selling all sorts of products, right?
Products they weren't even using.
Yes. And products that probably didn't work, right? I mean, how many fit tea or waist trainers, did we see in social media? And those are gone because I'm guessing those were the subjects of complaints. They were the subjects of lawsuits because I don't think the influencers were disclosing that they weren't using them, that they were ads, and they probably didn't even work.
Yeah, every single contract I get nowadays, literally the clause is like this long for the amount of proper language that we should have on the post. I like the fact that there is now the Instagram branded content tool, which means we have to disclose whether we are earning commissions from the post or this is a paid sponsorship, and then we're supposed to have hashtag ad or hashtag spon in the beginning within the first 120 characters. People have to see it in the front, behind, on the side, right? It has to be very visible that this is an advertisement. So, and I actually really like it because I feel like now I'm able to build a much more authentic relationship with my audience, and I proudly endorse products that I actually use. I'll never promote anything that I don't believe in.
Yeah, I think there were consumer rights attorneys that took issue with this, and there were a lot of products sold, and consumers were upset, and I wouldn't be surprised if influencers, if companies, and Instagram itself was sued. And because of those lawsuits, Instagram changed its terms of service. Everywhere you go right now, if you are promoting something, you have to disclose it so it's not misleading to the consumer, and you can't be accused of false advertising.
So, Neama, recently I have been dealing with a little bit of an issue on the back end. There's someone pretending to be me, using my photos, using my videos, and sending very bad, naughty messages to other people. And it's not my account because they don't have the verification mark, but that's not stopping them from trying.
Yeah, huge problem we're seeing right now, especially with influencers, content creators like yourself, XIXI. People are trying to take advantage of your brand. So there's two ways you can deal with this. The first is through the platform itself. You can file a complaint, flag the account, hopefully it gets taken down. The other thing you could do is to file a lawsuit. Now this is pretty aggressive, and this is what I recommend you do if it's become a persistent problem and it's a specific individual or group. The issue is this: you're not going to know who it is. So what you're going to have to do is file a Jane Doe, John Doe lawsuit. So it'd be XIXI Yang against John Doe. But when you file that lawsuit, that allows you to serve subpoenas. And you're going to subpoena Facebook, you're going to subpoena TikTok, because they're not going to provide you information even on that fake account without a subpoena. Once you subpoena, you get the subscriber information, then you amend your complaint, you add that John Doe, that Jane Doe as the actual person who is copying your account. The issue you're going to have, of course, the person is overseas. Is that someone that you're ever going to get a judgment against? Maybe not, but you'll at least be able to identify who the person is who's copying your content. So XIXI and I, we've worked together with celebrities who dealt with other celebrities saying bad things about them. And it's an issue that I see on social media a lot. Lies, rumors, misinformation. And really, is it time that people start suing each other for defamation for things that are said on social media? A couple big cases recently. Justin Bieber sued someone who allegedly made up allegations of sexual assault. And same thing with Dodgers pitcher Trevor Bauer, who's dealing with a similar issue, and he's also aggressively moving after the person that he claims made up stories about him.
Neama, that is such a great point because to me, I always break it down into two different categories. One is legally, what is that person's rights? What can they do? And then the second one is the court of public opinion. Because with social media, unfortunately nowadays, I feel like it's almost character assassination where the person is automatically guilty before people see all the evidence, right? People just jump on the hate train and then rumors become real. And whether there is any truth in that or not, the person becomes guilty by the court of public opinion. So how would you suggest a celebrity or content creator who is being defamed, how would you suggest that they protect both sides?
XIXI, I think this is one of the areas where the legal and PR strategy, they diverge, right? Legally, you can go after the person who's making up the rumors. You can spend money, and oftentimes celebrities have money to make that person's life miserable, the person who's putting the defaming content out there. But the question is, from a PR perspective, and I think you'd be the expert, you're really giving that person who's probably a smaller voice a much bigger voice. Lawsuits are public. Media outlets are going to report about it because you're a celebrity who's going after this individual. Doesn't make PR sense for you to go after someone even if they are defaming you.
Yeah, because next thing you know, you're lending your clout to grow their name, bring more notoriety to the case, just to what? Give them a book deal?
Yeah.
Get them on talk shows?
Yeah, so sometimes I have to tell my clients who are celebrities, listen, I know this is upsetting you, but you're really throwing fuel on the fire by making this person even more popular, or at least giving him or her a bigger stage.
So Neama, would you just recommend for them to settle if it's very, little?
It depends on the case. Obviously, if the person's defamatory statements are affecting you in a way, it's affecting your bottom line, national media is talking about it, you gotta nip it in the bud and go after it aggressively. But if it's just some loudmouth on Instagram or TikTok, someone that probably isn't gonna get much attention for more than a few days or so, I think it's better to let it go, because ultimately the lawsuit is gonna drag on for months, if not longer.
Well, thank you all so much for watching. I know I learned so much just sitting here next to Neama, the superstar, learning about all the legalities of staying out of trouble as a content creator, as a journalist, as a business owner. If you felt like this video was useful to you, make sure you click that notification so you don't miss a beat. Hit the comment section down below if you have any burning questions for Neama, for myself, and make sure you subscribe.
Speaking of subscribe, make sure to subscribe to XIXI's social media channels, YouTube, Instagram. She's one of the best content creators out there, whether it's traditional media, whether it's social media. She covers everything from celebrity news to true crime and everything in between. Make sure you give her a follow.
We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.